Hey guys, Carl from Purple Moose Plays. Today I'm taking a preview look at a prototype copy of the upcoming game, Ministry of Lost Things, Case 2, Finders, Keepers. This is now the second game in the Ministry of Lost Things puzzletale series from PostCurious games and designers Rita Orlov, Mark Larson, and Chelsea Stark, in which this sort of world exists that all of the lost items in our world get sent off to this other world where they're sort of loved and taken care of, but occasionally some of the items that were still very loved and are now sadly missed because they've disappeared are sort of recovered to send back to our own world. And in this case, it is a keychain filled with keys and other keychains, or sorry, a carabiner filled with keys and keychains, and you're trying to find all of these things to get them back by solving a variety of different puzzles. Disclaimer, as this is a preview of a prototype of this game, I was given advanced access to this game by the publisher for this video, but as always, I will do my best to give you my own honest opinion on the game. With that said, let's head down to the table to see an overview of this game without a whole lot of spoilers, and then I'll meet you back up here to let you know what I think about the whole experience. All right, so here we have the second game, the second box in the Ministry of Lost Things puzzletale series, Case 2, Finders, Keepers. I'm going to do the same thing I do for all of my PostCurious videos, and basically I'm going to show you what's in the box, read through any sort of documentation that comes in there, and then just show you sort of the envelopes and stuff that's in there. I'm only going to open the first envelope, and I won't solve anything on camera, just to give you an idea of what comes inside the envelopes. So let's go ahead and do that, opening up. And first we see this letter, so let's go ahead and read this letter. It says, "To whom it may concern, thank you for taking on the position of scout at the Department of Returns. Whether this is your inaugural case with us or you're a veteran scout, because again, this is the second game in the series, we're grateful for your service. If you're new, or if Anista ran off with your pertinent memories, please read on for some background on our world and your assigned casework. Whenever an umbrella vanishes from the closet or your socks get lost in the dryer, they don't actually disappear. They're just in the Luciferse, a parallel dimension full of forgotten items. These objects travel from your world, the Realisphere, to ours, the Elusiverse, thanks to special creatures called Neasters, the only beings able to travel at will between dimensions. Neasters are natural collectors who excel at tracking down forgotten items, bringing them to the Elusiverse. Occasionally, there are clerical errors in which a Neaster takes an item that still has sentimental value or purpose in the Realisphere. Naturally, this sort of glitch in the space-time continuum is quite embarrassing for the Ministry. This is where the Department of Returns comes in. When we get a signal from the Realisphere that there's been a mistake, we endeavor to reunite the object with its human companion as soon as possible. Recently, we've partnered with Realisphere volunteers to better keep up with demand and speed up processing times. We're pleased to have you on board." It says, your assigned case involves a young woman named Jenna and her lost carabiner. We've already tracked down the carabiner, but Jenna used him to carry various keys and keychains, which have now dispersed across the Elusiverse. Unfortunately, the carabiner seems to be either mildly concussed or severely inebriated, and we've retrieved very little information from him. See below for a transcript of his interview. So the Ministry says, what is your name? Carrie. Carrie the carabiner. We're supposed to believe that? Could you maybe talk a little quieter? My head is pounding. What happened last night? I don't remember. You don't remember anything at all? I remember being attached to Jenna's bag with all the keys and keychains on me. I don't know how we ended up here, whatever here is exactly. Everyone scattered once we arrived. The house key stayed on the longest, but even she's gone now. Everything is so fuzzy. I think we were on a boat at some point. How many were with you exactly? Can you tell us that? It was me, 5 keys, 4 keychains, and an ID card. But need nap. Just a few more questions. What else can you tell us about the keys, about Jenna? It says, we've dispatched Neasters to Jenna's place of residence to gather information that may aid your investigation. To open this case file, log into ministryoflostthings.org and enter G. blah 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 as the case ID. Should you find yourself in need of additional assistance, you can access our self-service help system within the portal once you begin the case. Thank you again for volunteering your time and helping us maintain Elusiversal equilibrium. Warmest regards, Penelope Inkford, Chief Object Organizer, MOLT. All right, so I do want to show just what happens at this website when I go there. And again, I am going to show the envelopes that are in here, as well as show you what's inside Transmission 1. So to start, I'm going to load up that website, ministryoflostthings.org. And when you load it up, you will see this. It says, welcome to the Department of Returns. So we're going to type in the case that we did. And it says I can register or log in. So entering my email address, they're going to send me an email login. All right, and then when I'm successfully logged in, solve a case. And we're going to enter in the new one, Finders Keepers, which I could just pick from a drop-down menu, which is nice and helpful. Submit. Successfully open case G908B, blah, blah, blah. Then open Transmission 1. All right, so first things first, before I open the envelope, it says here, current mission goals. Use the enclosed map of the keys with the 8 pieces of GPS data to find out where Jenna's house key ended up. Put the Polaroids of Louie's diner menu together and use Jenna's journal to figure out what her lost breakfast keychain looks like. And then I have to answer 2 questions. Which island did Jenna's house key wind up? And what does the lost breakfast keychain look like? All right, so let's go ahead and look in envelope 1 or Transmission 1. And again, I'm not going to show you what's in the other envelope, or other envelopes. This one's got a bunch of these clear cards called data 1 through 8, which probably means there's some kind of overlay puzzle going on there. Got some letters. I've got this map, one-sided. I've got some cards that look like they're pieces of a menu that's been cut into pieces from possibly Louie's Diner. But I guess actually remembering now, looking back at the website, these are actually not cut out pieces, but these are Polaroids, hence the frame around them. And that makes a whole lot more sense and looks a whole lot cooler thematically. So I've got Polaroids of the diner menu that I got to put together. I have to use this map with the GPS data, which is these here, to find out where the key ended up. And there's a couple of letters. So let me go ahead and read these, and that's sort of where I will cut. So we've got first the memo from the MOLT, Department of Returns. Transmission 1 says, our missing carabiner was last seen with one of the missing keys in the keys. He rented a boat and headed west from the dock, taking one continuous path without stopping anywhere along the way. He just whizzed around the islands, but never landed on any of them during the journey. In the end, he did wash up on one of the islands, but we're not sure which one. We've been able to retrieve some GPS information from the boat, but it seems like the tracker was damaged. The jumbled output we retrieved has been included on the 8 transparent strips. Can you place together the carabiner's path and determine where he ended up? Hopefully that key he was seen with will still be there. Additionally, we learned from Jenna's journal of a missing keychain shaped like a breakfast food. We sent an Easter to the diner, mentioned in her journal entry to get a copy of the menu, but they came back with a bunch of Polaroids of it instead. You'll need to reconstruct the menu and figure out the breakfast rule to identify what the missing keychain looks like. Once you're ready, enter your findings into the portal. All right, so I guess these are going to be some way that we need to move around on the map, putting those together in different ways. I do have to say so far I'm enjoying that all of this, and this is true from the previous game as well, all of this sort of stuff that I'm doing thematically ties very directly into the story that the game is telling, which is really cool. And over here it says, I can't believe I lost my keys. Dana's going to be so mad at me if I don't find them soon. I already got a major big sis lecture about being more responsible. I know it's only been 2 months since I moved in with her, but it's not like I lost them on purpose. Can't blame her for being mad though. If I don't find them ASAP and we have to tell the landlord, he's going to charge us a ton of money to change the locks. Money I do not have because I just started my internship. My first day was so good, but then I got a little too tipsy at the happy hour and now my keys are gone. And all my awesome keychains. And the carabiner that held them together, poof, all gone. Even my favorite keychain is gone. It reminds me of when Dana and I used to get brunch every Sunday at Louie's. The owners there like games as much as we do, and we love playing the little games they made for the regulars. The person who didn't choose on the last visit gets to pick a dish. Each subsequent person follows the rule for what to order for themselves. For example, the morning I ordered the breakfast burrito, Dana got the Eggs Benedict. When she ordered the croissant sandwich, I got the hot waffle. No, the tot waffle. All the food is so good. The game just makes things a little more interesting. One morning after our traditional brunch date, we got a flat tire and had to walk to this really weird middle of nowhere rest stop. They had all these cute keychains in the shop and a bunch in the shape of breakfast dishes. We each got one to commemorate our breakfast order that day. She got to choose first that morning and still carries around her fried egg on toast. It seems silly to care about a trinket, but I like carrying a little piece of her with me whenever we're apart. Okay, enough reminiscing. I really need to find my keys. Time to retrace those steps. All right, so this clearly ties into the pictures from the diner to help me figure out the rule and find that breakfast keychain. And then this GPS and this map clearly tied together to figure out where the house key wound up on which island. I'm gonna stop there. I've already shown you sort of how this game starts off. I'm gonna play through the whole thing, and then when you meet me back up top in just a minute, I will talk about my entire experience with this box. Welcome back. I hope that overview was helpful for you without giving away too much stuff in the box. I do want to point out I didn't show all of the envelopes. There are 5 sort of cases, 5 different puzzle sets in the box, as well as one final envelope that has a sort of story wrap up and some nice surprises in there as well. I just wanted to point that out because I did go back and watch my video for the original game, and that was 4 envelopes plus a story. So this has an additional envelope of puzzles over the original game. But where do I start with this one? The first game, the first Ministry of Lost Things game, I had a blast with. I previewed that one as well, and I really, really enjoyed what they were doing in that game. And I'm generally also a huge fan of pretty much everything that PostCurious does, leaning more towards these series. So this one and Morrison Game Factory that have a sort of lighter, funny, sort of tongue-in-cheek kind of theming or flair to them. But if you don't know, PostCurious is a company that makes these puzzle tales, which are basically escape room in a box packages, except they are extremely narrative heavy. And the sort of difficulty of the puzzles and the sort of variety of the sorts of narrative stories that are being told in these boxes range dramatically. Some of their boxes are really difficult, some of them are somewhat easy, some of their stories are very sort of deep and dark and emotional and grown up, while others are sort of goofy and fun and friendly. This one, or this series, leans towards the goofy, friendly, and also easier puzzle side of things. But I'm all here for it. I love, love, love everything about this series. First off, just looking at it, the coloring of this one, purple and pink, yay. But the theming, the art, everything, these games in this series, well, all of their games really, but in this series particular, look beautiful. I love the art direction and the sort of drawing and the physicality of the components and everything else in this series. And I also have to say this theming, this idea that all of your lost stuff, like your left sock and the change you left in the sofa of your house, all disappears to this different world, and that occasionally something that you really want also disappears, and they work real hard to get that back to you. And you as a player in this game are sort of helping them piece together the information to help them find those missing items and get them back to the people who lost them. And I think it's a really cool theme. I think it plays out really fun. It really does. I said this in my previous video, but I'm saying this again right now. It really feels like a Pixar kind of movie, like Inside Out, or something like that, where you find yourself in this sort of alternate reality, strange world that sort of connects and ties into our world in some way. And it's just really fun to see this world get more and more fleshed out with different stories and different sort of missions and so on as you play through these different different sort of boxes of story of different missing items. And I really do hope that this series continues on. But let's talk specifically about this one. This time the theme is a carabiner was lost that had a bunch of keychains and keys on it, and basically every envelope that you're opening is a pairing of one keychain and one key that you're trying to figure out. So there's basically 2 puzzles in each of the envelopes of this game. And the puzzles in this are very good to me, very interesting to me in that, as I mentioned before, this box is a fairly simpler side of things, an easier side of things compared to some of their other heavier, more complicated boxes. And that makes sense for the price tag and the size of the box that this one comes in, but also thematically, this is a friendlier, lighthearted kind of story, so it makes sense that the puzzles are friendlier and lighthearted as well. But I just want to say that the puzzles in this box are not easy. They are simpler puzzles. There's not many different layers of stuff to get into. but also sort of the note that comes with each of these sets of puzzles kind of gives you the push in the direction you need, that this is what you're looking for and this is kind of what you need to do to get there. But the kind of what you need to do to get there is kind of coded in some way specific to that puzzle in the writing of the notes. So you kind of have to figure out what that code is. Not code like weird letters, code meaning something hidden in the way that the words are written. Either a word used differently or special stuff that you have to sort of figure out based on what you're reading in that note. But once you've figured out that, it sort of pushes you in the direction you need to go. And then it's not about figuring out how to solve the puzzle. It's just about doing the solving of the puzzle, means following those threads. And there are still a couple of things that you'll have to discover or make connections with along the way. But I really do enjoy that when it's a puzzle that I'm not killing myself trying to figure out where do I get started. It's more about, okay, here's the starting point, and now how do I use this thing that I've been given to come to some meaningful end? And it really does feel just the right sort of balance of simplistic, meaning that it doesn't hurt to figure out, but that also when you're done solving the puzzle, you think back and say, hey, that was interesting, that was clever, I feel good about what I did solving that puzzle. I still get that feeling of satisfaction that I did something, I figured something out, but I don't get that horrible brain burn of where do I even start with this thing? What am I even doing? Which of these pieces do I need to even use to figure out what it is that I'm doing? And that balance works really well here. Particularly because each of these puzzles really does tie in thematically to what the story is saying. This is a story about items being lost. And this is a story about those items that are being lost thematically tying into something, whether what that key has been used for or what the shape of that keychain is, and then tying that in somehow thematically to the world about what happened to that key because of that shape, because of that use, and then somehow using that to then also tie into the way that the puzzle plays or the kind of thing that you're searching for as an answer to that puzzle. And I think it works wonderfully that each of these puzzles not only connects to the story, but also tells the story as you play the puzzle. And I was really very pleasantly surprised, not surprised because there's nothing mind-blowingly unique in here, but I was pleasantly happy about how this stuff played out and the kinds of things I had to do. This box is obviously a small box, so you're not going to get anything huge in there, but there are physical puzzles. There are spatial arrangement kind of puzzles. There are those kinds of puzzles you know from growing up in school that says like, this guy is taller than that guy, and this guy woke up on Saturday, and this guy has a dog, and which one is which, and when did they wake up, and whose animal is it? That kind of sort of logical, layered kind of puzzle. You see that in here. There are sort of coding kinds of things where things spell out words or connect in different ways to give you some kind of written answer. That there's all different kinds of variety, and even in those puzzles that I've kind of seen before, like that logical style puzzle, because everything is wrapped in theme, because everything is wrapped in narrative, it makes those sort of familiar puzzles fresh again, and I really do appreciate that. And there were a lot of fun aha kind of moments that came out of this. There was one puzzle that uses ID cards in a really interesting way. I was very, very happy with what I saw both physically and sort of mentally in this box, and I really do hope that they do a lot more of this. Also, I want to talk about the online piece of this, because in the previous game that I just covered from them, Emerald Echoes, they went completely offline and put all of the hints and everything into a physical sort of paper version of that. And it worked well and I enjoyed it, but I still kind of missed their online systems because PostCurious does online systems very nicely. This one, as you saw, you log in with an email address for no other reason than so that every time you log in, it tracks your progress and you don't have to accidentally sort of retype all your stuff in to get back to where you were if you do set it down and come back again. I should point out, timing-wise, each of these envelopes has 2 puzzles. Each puzzle is roughly 15-20 minutes, so you're looking at half an hour to 45 minutes or so per envelope. And that's 5 envelopes in there, so that's like 2.5 to 4 hours, 5 hours or so. Good amount of time, so you might put it down and come back to it later, and having that sort of login system on the site was nice to have. Now, it did mean, though, that sometimes when I left and I came back again, I did have to log in again, get a response email, click on the link and go back in again. So it did add one sort of extra step rather than just logging in. But it was nice to be able to jump back into where I left off. But more importantly, the system is wonderful. Because it's tracking where you are, because it's tracking what you've done, it only shows you the information for the envelope that you're currently working on. And when you click on that, it's got a little bit extra story in the app because it really does feel like I'm interacting with some kind of sort of web portal, message portal in the world of the game. And then again, as I mentioned, the notes in each envelope sort of pushing you towards what the puzzle is that you're trying to do. The website also does that because the way that you're sort of progressing to the next envelope is by answering a series of questions from the envelope you're working on. So again, each envelope has 2 puzzles, and then each of those puzzles sort of has a question that you're trying to answer based on what you're doing in that puzzle. And again, that question is thematic to the story, but also sort of gives you a push towards what it is that you're trying to figure out for that specific envelope. But more than that, what I love about this system is that I have to answer the question when I'm done. And if I get the question wrong, it tells you this question is wrong. And if I get the question right, it doesn't say anything. So if I get one of those questions right and one of those questions wrong, I know what I've done wrong and I know exactly what I need to retry and get done. But it also doesn't ruin it by telling me what the answer is. I can try and try and try and try until I figure out what the actual answer is, which is great because a lot of times in these games, if you don't get it right, you kind of need to get a hint that's extra sort of in your face that sort of you should have done this instead. And I will like to have a hint system, and I'll talk about that in a minute because their hint system is great too. But without using hints, I like the ability to know, try this again, you've got this, now try this again, kind of a thing. And I do appreciate that. And I also want to say that whatever's going on behind in the background of the coding of this website, big thumbs up, because I know as a teacher using Google Classroom and using Google Forms, anytime I ask a student a question with a typed out answer, if it's typed out in just the wrong way, means the wrong letter's capitalized or the space is in the wrong place or there's no period or whatever, the answer is flagged as incorrect even though it's the actual correct answer. Now, I don't know how much of that is actually here and how much I just got lucky, but I will say that every time I typed in an answer, it was the right answer, assuming that I solved the puzzle correctly. So I didn't ever have any syntax problems where it wasn't typed in correctly, so I didn't get the right answer. And on a website like this where I am typing in sort of longer phrases, it is nice to see that I don't bump into any of that kind of problem with syntax of the answer. So thumbs up from me on that. Talking further, there is an FAQ and there is a hint system on this website. The FAQ is complete nonsense and I love it. It's really just a way to throw in extra jokes into the system or into the story because all of the FAQ is an FAQ about sort of being an agent or being a person helping out with this Ministry of Lost Things and not related to the physicality of this being a board game. And it really made me chuckle reading through. I want to pause here and just say the humor in this game is a lot of fun. Some of it's really silly and really stupid, but I enjoy really silly and really stupid. There are a ton of puns in this game. And while they might make some of you groan, I was loving all of the silliness thrown in here. Lots of tying back to this idea of keys. Really, really fun, really, really silly, but really made me smile as I was playing. But back to the online system, the hint system itself is also wonderful. These people, PostCurious, have really, really figured out how to do a hint system, meaning that each of these puzzles in these envelopes has super long list of hints, and every hint they give you is like the smallest, slightest bit of a step in solving that puzzle. It's like they recorded people solving the puzzles, and then every time the person said something, thought something, did something, anything at all, they wrote that down, and that's the step in the puzzle. So it's really, really slowly walking you through the puzzle, which means that if you're halfway through the puzzle and you click hint, it's going to walk you through all of the things you did. So before you get a hint about what you need to do next, you've gotten confirmation of everything that you've done so far, that you know you're on the right track. So you may not even need a hint. You may just be worried that you're not doing something right because you can't get the right answer. And then you click the hint button and you say, go, 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 and you go through the first 5 hints, and it's exactly the 5 things that you just finished doing, and you say, oh, you know what? I'll just keep brute forcing this, or not brute forcing, but trying to work around what it is that I'm doing because I'm clearly on the right path. And I appreciate that in a hint system. It doesn't just push you to this is what you need to do, or this is the answer. It says, do this, now do this. Now, did you think about this? Now that you thought about this, what if you tried this? And then how about thinking of it from this angle? And it really, really does work very well. I had a blast with this. The only small negative, the only small bump that I hit along the way was one of the puzzles is a spatial puzzle, and I thought I'd solved it, and it just wasn't working out in the end. And that's when I really dug into the hint system, because I thought, something's not right. And then I'm reading the hint system, and it's saying everything I did is exactly right. I did is exactly right. And I said, but that doesn't make any sense. And then I clicked the answer, and it showed what I got, but it didn't work. And I said, something's not right. And then using that to solve the actual answer was something's not right. And I did reach out, and it turns out the picture of the solution wasn't correct. And that's on me as well, that I thought their incorrect picture was correct because it matched my incorrect solution. Because when I figured out, or when I heard what the solution actually was, I instantly realized, well, yeah, duh, of course I should have just done that instead of that, and it would have been perfect. And then if I had done that, I would have gotten the perfect right answer. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with the puzzle. It was just here a matter of the hint system reinforcing what I had done incorrectly and convincing me that that was the correct answer. And that has obviously been caught and will be fixed, so that hiccup won't happen in the real game. And realistically, I should have just sat down and thought bigger, or not bigger, but thought harder or more about the puzzle, and I probably would have figured it out on my own. But sometimes when I'm reviewing these things, I am trying to get through them a little bit quicker than I normally would. So if I had just paused and breathed, the puzzle itself was a really cool puzzle, and it worked very well. I just made a silly mistake and then was reinforced by the hint, and it was a little hiccup. But beyond that, everything I saw in this box I had a blast doing. Nothing made me feel stupid, but everything made me feel like I had accomplished something. The story is wonderful, the characters are wonderful, the art design, the theming, the world, everything. I love this series, and I really hope for more of them. And anyway, this is still not out yet for all of you. So I do definitely recommend checking this out. If you enjoyed the first one, absolutely you're going to enjoy this one. I enjoyed this one even more than I did the first. If you are a fan of escape room and box games, especially if you're afraid of some of the sort of more advanced, difficult, thinky kind of puzzles, if you do enjoy this sort of cute, whimsical, otherworld story a la Toy Story or Inside Out or something like that, this is absolutely a game that's worth checking out. This video is going live. As this goes live, the Kickstarter should be happening right at the end of this month, but there is a link down below right now that you can click on to follow the campaign, or if you're watching this after it launches, to head over to the campaign and check this out. There's not really anything else for me to say. I hope that this video was helpful for you. As always, if you did enjoy the video, I do ask that you like, subscribe, and click the bell icon below, and I'll see you all next time. Thanks.